Hello, welcome to the Myth-Busting Neurodiverse Relationships podcast. I'm Natalie Roberts and I'm here with my co-host, Heather Parks. We've both been in our neurodiverse relationships and families for more than 25 years. We met 10 years ago when we were feeling really desperate and trying to solve a lot of issues in our relationship and our families. We've been journeying since then. We've found many more positive and hopeful ways to solve, resolve, repair, reconnect in those relationships and in our families, in our lives. And we now co-host also Loving Difference online, giving hope and a way forward for neurodiverse relationships. In this podcast, though, we're busting the myths about neurodiverse relationships, which we had when we started this journey, that we've realised aren't true, and that actually were preventing us from recovering and having the relationships with our partners and children that we wanted. So we want to dispel these myths and bring you hope that absolutely things can change. So whether you're out and about or comfy with a cuppa, let's dive into our next conversation. See you there.
Why is it that birthdays can seem so tricky in our neurodiverse relationships and households? In this episode, Natalie and I reflect on some hard-earned lessons around birthdays and how we've learnt to navigate them. Unfortunately, we didn't always have such an understanding of the differences and preferences operating in our families, so birthdays became a source of disappointment, frustration, stress and confusion as we tried to figure out why it seemed so hard. When we began to realise the extent of the anxiety that birthdays create, we shifted our expectations and were able to welcome in new ways of celebrating and of giving and receiving, even if none of it looks traditional.
So Heather, I thought it would be an interesting topic to hop on and have a little chat about birthdays. One of the things that I think when I started learning more about neurodiversity and we were still navigating the challenges of birthdays, I started to learn some things, but also still found them quite challenging times. And I thought it'd just be, one of our little ones we could maybe have a shorter conversation about and just offer some tips and some of our experiences around that. So shall I share a little bit of what it was been like for me with birthdays in our family and our history?
I'm just going to go straight in there. Straight in there. Biggest birthday tip ever. Just do your own birthday.
I think we've learnt it well, don't you, since...
I certainly have. Yeah, certainly have. But go for it, IJ.
Yeah, so I was just, I guess for me, looking backwards, the things that I remember feeling very frustrated. I think frustration and sadness were my two biggest feelings around birthdays every time they come up. I can remember obviously with the children having birthdays and birthday parties. They just felt very traumatic. Both the fact that I seem to organise all of them, which I guess is not necessarily that unusual in families where mum organises the parties, but I definitely recall Pete just having no interest in it at all, really not wanting to go, and in the end just didn't come to them. So I was doing the whole kids' parties thing on my own. They just didn't work, and even going out as families on birthdays didn't work. Buying gifts didn't seem to work very well. Lots of things like that. And then around my own birthday, I think just always feeling a bit disappointed. I think Pete always did his best, but I think, and in some ways I do find it a little bit difficult to look back to that so much, because I think I've just found better ways to do that now. But what about you? What do you remember about birthdays?
Yeah, similar. So disappointment around my own birthday, even though I didn't have massive expectations, but it was just...
Yeah, I remember Pete, there was never any more... Pete never arranged any... There was no cards from the children. He didn't buy anything from them on his behalf, on their behalf, or whatever the words are. Yeah, there was not really any of that, which I guess was just a bit unusual, or Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a bit of a non-event. And then
It was like he hadn't really remembered it was coming.
yeah, no, it was often only because other cards arrived from other people that there seemed to trigger a memory.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't know whether that was actually the truth or whether he just didn't really want to bring it up because he wasn't sure how to. And that is because I think in retrospect, he just didn't like his own birthday. So
Yeah.
of course, then he didn't really understand that other people
Always
did.
like, enjoyed their birthdays. Yeah. I think
One
for
of the things
me,
I noticed is that
yeah.
he was just really in a bad mood on his birthday. I mean, to the extent that I used to think it's almost like it just felt a bit selfish and self-indulgent and like a bit kind of
Yeah, because you're wanting to celebrate it. That's what I remember.
yeah.
I was wanting to celebrate it in a particular way, his birthdays. But it always, that didn't feel wanted. And I think for my birthdays, thinking back now, I think people, didn't know the conventions. He hadn't noticed that there were conventions about that, or things that he are not for shoulds now, but there were shoulds. What dads should be doing with their kids for the mum's birthday, and these sorts of social conventions, and they weren't happening. And then I think, around his own birthday, he just wanted it to just be a normal day, just at work. And I think for him, generally, he was always just in the day. Every day really just needs to be the same. So this is not really any different a day. It just happens to be my birthday. So he just wanted everyone to treat it the same. And
That
was
didn't
what
allow
we
any
wanted.
space for anyone else to
No,
celebrate it or to make it
no.
special or to do the children's thing or to
Yes,
get the cake
yes.
or
Yeah,
any of the other things that they associated with birthdays.
yeah.
And yes, it was difficult and also what shifted it, I think was probably my first thing was when I read about love languages.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Because the other thing was like gifts were always really tricky. Like it always felt like he didn't like whatever I got him, even when it was something that I knew he really wanted. But even then it was like he would have preferred doing the research and the choosing and the buying for himself. And actually someone giving him that bit kind of taken away that side of what he enjoyed about the thing.
Yeah.
So
I think for us,
yeah,
it was slightly different things. It was Pete much more specific or particular about what he likes, and very difficult for
yeah,
any of us to know really to get that right enough. And then also really just, again, very uncomfortable with receiving gifts is what I know
very
now. Very uncomfortable with that, not
terrified
liking
of opening
surprise,
them and then
not
yeah,
wanting to open
not
them, particularly in front of other
reacting.
people.
Yeah.
Very very hot, just very hostile environment for him to be trying to know how to be, to do the right kind of response, I guess,
Yeah.
and just it's just all overwhelming. The whole thing of birthday is just too overwhelming and too much of a change from usual
And way
routines as
too much
well.
focus on them.
Yeah, yes,
That was one of the things. Just didn't really want attention drawn. So why would you? And it's not the same as birthdays. I mean, but I look back and I just think, can you imagine how much nightmare the wedding?
oh, I do, and I went round it twice because we renewed our vows about 6 months before we discovered Pete's autistic, and I look back now and I think, I mean, I had learned some things, so he didn't do any kind of speech the second time round, but and I knew that was the right thing, but I look back even now at the wedding, and we've watched the video fairly recently, and I just feel really, really feel for him, because I now know what was going
Yeah.
on for him that day, and he just wasn't okay really until everything was finished. And second time around it was slightly different, but still very difficult. All of that. So how have you changed your perspective on birthday specifically? And I guess there's your birthday, their birthday, and their way with other people's birthdays, because that's kind of what I've realized. I've had to navigate those sort of three
Yeah.
things, or
Three
have
different
different ways
things.
with those three things.
So certainly for my own one, that was the easy one. I think once I got back to sort of rediscovering myself and knowing what I wanted and what I valued and what it was, why did I get disappointed at birthdays? What did I want to do for a birthday? What gifts would I actually like to receive? And then I realised I could just put all of that into place. So that was really easy. Um, you know, yes, and realizing that it's okay to organize your own thing and you don't have to wait around for someone else to suggest something or to
I
notice it.
realised I'm quite an inviter. I actually like
Yeah,
making invitations, and so I've certainly for a few years I went away for a weekend for my birthday one year and organised a meal out a couple of years in a row with friends and did that, and then had on a different day a meal out with Pete on our own. So one of my strategies has been multiple celebrations of my birthday with different people in ways that meet their needs and the way they would best feel comfortable with me to celebrate. And my greatest value for me is connection. I found that to be the best way for me is actually to connect
and that's
with them
exactly
in the
it.
best way for them.
What is it that you value the most? And then how can you achieve that with all the different people in your life in ways which ensure you get that connection, as opposed to shut down defensiveness, them not enjoying it, or all of those things, isn't it? And just appreciating that, neurodiversity aside, that other people, we're all different and we have different ways of showing and expressing those things so that they can be doing, and it's just a day. That's the other thing. Like that's
but
an
I think
expectation thing.
until you've moved forward, and we've done work around feeling of value all the time. I'm not needing those days so much, because I'm like, well, let's do that every day. It's nice to have the extra special like top up, but I'm like, well, I'll do that as a top up and I can make that happen and everything. And the same with gifts. I think I realized I was giving gifts without realizing, quite conditionally, because it's only when you know what people's challenges are with it that you realize you're giving a gift with an expectation that they will respond in a certain way, that they will say thank you, that they will open it with you, that they
will be excited.
And these always sound very well. Of course people would do that, but actually if they're very anxious, not necessarily. So could I just give a gift and actually I don't see it opened, and I don't necessarily get a thank you because the thank you's implied, and actually I'd rather that they received the gift than they felt very anxious about receiving the gift. So I think letting go of those things, those conditions,
I had to do that.
I realised I had put on it.
I had to let go around that with Christmas, and even with the children as well, because you kind of imagine, and of course your expectation is Christmas morning you all sit around with a lovely big pile of presents and all do that, and we did sort of manage to do that for a few years, but then after a while it was really just not working. So if it's not working, you have to do something differently, don't you?
Something different.
I think that's the thing.
And what about so I guess that's how I've then responded to, and again now it's doing what Pete would like to do for his birthday, which often is much more low-key. He's not really into birthday cakes or singing or any of that stuff, or even going out. We might go out for a meal, but often not on the day, maybe on another day, because then the
pressure's off, isn't it?
Pressure's off about what day it is. So you can still do a meal, but it's not all about that. I can remember one year we put some candles in our actual meal rather than a sort of separate cake and all that kind of thing, and just making it just much more low key, no singing, celebrating with others in the way they would prefer to celebrate, rather than, and then celebrating my birthday in the way I would prefer to celebrate. I think is the thing.
So I took that probably one step further. So we kind of just went right back to no expectations around birthdays, and it's been really interesting because I can't remember how many years we've been doing that. It's almost like we just ignore it on his birthday. And then last year he actually said he would like a card next time, so that's new though. So and again, but it's on it's on the person's terms, whose day it is, rather than on the terms of everyone else who wants it to
feel or be a certain way. And I think that's really important. I think the other thing I've needed to let go of was around Pete's way that he will be with other people's birthdays, and just saying his relationship with any of these people is his relationship with them, and he does their birthday as he decides to do it. And that means that with the kids, he generally actually he buys stuff or does something with them, often even at a different time of the year, or he's got his own way of doing it and I've got my own way of doing it, which, given that we're very different people, just makes more sense. And so that's worked better, rather than us trying to join up and work on that together. It's been better to kind of just to do it that way, I think. And even down to, I can remember making a decision at one point that I wouldn't send birthday cards. Actually, generally, I kind of stopped doing birthday cards because I just realised I didn't have the energy for that at a time when I needed to be ditching quite some stuff. And I realised birthday cards and remembering to send them and stuff was something I was going to stop doing. But one of the things I would definitely not do now was to sort out birthdays for his family.
Yeah, I stopped doing all that as well.
I was going to focus on my family and my friends, and that was up to him. And again, that has found its own way, but it isn't the same way that I would do it. But it's fine. Nobody's complaining about it. There's not a load of terrible stuff going on, and I just think that's between them. And that also has been a sort of release, I think, and a letting go of that, and feels better. Yeah.
I do worry about kind of, I suppose, like, because what our hopes and aspirations are that our young people, having grown up with the diagnosis, will understand themselves better and will be able to implement what works and everything. But at the same time, society have gone more bonkers about birthdays and the sort of the parties and stuff that are going on now. Everything seems to be getting bigger and huge. And hen do's are getting, and stag do's, and all of those kind of events just seem to have got more huge.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to take a steadfastness and a knowing and a real sort of trust in what's okay for me, what's okay for you, and not
to
listening.
What extent can I meet your need for birth? Like, yeah, you're right. And they will have partners, and they will need to be able to have the conversations, which I hope we've sort of modelled and created some
safety around,
and also some language for, and some, again, as you say, some trust in themselves about what their needs are, so that they're better able to say what their need is or what their preference is in relation to birthdays of their own, and then find out and explore what that is with their partner, and then figure out to what extent or capacity they can meet that need and which they can't, and then their partner will need to work that out for themselves as well, about how okay or not okay they are with that. But I think there is better questions and different language to have around all of it, isn't there? Where you're
but it would have been good to have any kind of conversation around it, rather than just the unspoken expectations and then a build up of resentment, disappointment on both sides, because actually nobody was doing we didn't actually ask. We just always expected that was what was done, and that's what we should do.
And I think it is, again, it's not simply a neurodiversity thing. It's a combination of difference, trauma, anxiety, love languages, preferences, and maybe introversion and extroversion as well about some of those things. There's about 4 or 5 different things that I think play into something like birthdays, which is sort of a heightened or has more expectation or assumptions and narrative attached to it than an ordinary day. So that's why it gets magnified up into that thing, I think. But actually, if we come back down to different needs, different preferences, different social capacity, different love languages, we can, with more awareness of ours and our loved ones, we can actually create a really safe and loving way of doing birthdays.
And much more compassionate kind of,
that actually works for everyone. Yeah. It's a much more beautiful thing. So I hope that gives people some tips and some ways to be thinking about it a bit differently. I think love languages is a really helpful quiz to do, particularly for yourself and for your loved ones, because I think one of the things I realise is that birthdays, Valentine's, some of these other things, we tend to, the narrative, the cultural narrative is that we'll love in all 5 ways on one day. Like we'll do the act of service, we'll do the gifts, we'll do the quality time, we'll, we're trying to do all of them in a day. And actually all of us really probably only need one. So if you know the one, loving the one, and then you're done. It's a much simpler affair.
And also it's really I found it very useful to start acknowledging and exploring gratitude around some of those other things I didn't really see as that, and to be grateful for those every day of the year when they happened, not just
and also I think we can maybe we could do an episode, I think, on love languages and how valuable and helpful it's been as a framework, because I think it's really, really helpful. And how actually then we can not only notice and let in when our partners are loving in their language, but we can actually ask to be loved in that language, knowing that it's a way that they can do it more easily. And same for us, for us to be able to love in the way that's, certainly for me, gifts create a lot of anxiety. I'm not very comfortable at all with gifts as a giving or as a anything really. So for me, I would, it's been really helpful for me to just know I can just put that down, and
I find gifts stressful when there is an occasion or something, but I just love it, when you just spontaneously notice something and you think of someone. I mean, that is just so much, and you go, oh yeah, and it doesn't matter what time of the year it is, whether it's their birthday or not. That's what I love. And I'm
also a gifter of time. I've realised I'm happy to gift time or quality time, because my love language is quality time. So I realise I'm quite easily gift that. So I think that, it's a really helpful thing to think about.
There you go. Maybe that will be another
Next one.
If this episode has resonated with you, subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening or watching to get notifications of future episodes. To dive deeper into all of this with professional coaching, resources, and all the support you need, join us in Love Indifference via www.loveindifference.net. And we'll be back here soon.